Hello. Okay, perfect. All right, so hello everyone. It's great to be here once again. My name is Naomi, and I'm going to be sharing some more of the book called An Introduction, Jivan Vidya, An Introduction by A. Nagaraj, and it's translated by Rakesh Gupta. And yesterday we started the third section in the book, which is called The Constitution of Jivan. So we began with the Constitution of Jivan. And prior to that, we had Estelle's sister, and she talked all about the journey of A. Nagraj, which was the first section of the book, helping us understand the context in which he was born and raised. And then he got up to the point where he was able to understand the reality or comprehend the reality as it is, and be able to share Madhyas Darshan with all of us. And then Spencer Brother, he was sharing for 3 days about Jivan Vidya and what it is. And now we're talking about the constitution of Jivan. So what is Jivan? And we started that yesterday, and we're going to continue with that today. So if we look at yesterday, what did we talk about? When we were reading, A. Nagaraj was talking about how human beings today, we're living with our minimal potential. Right now, we're living with 4.5 activities. Rather than living with the complete 10 activities. And we were introduced yesterday to all those 10 activities. Fairly briefly, how Man has 2 functions, and which is taste and selection. And then there's vritti, we call it in, we're using the word vritti in English, which is deliberation and analysis. And then Chitta has 2 functions, which are contemplation and visualization. And then Buddhi has understanding and conviction, or sankalp. And then the 2 functions of Atma, realization and evidencing. And right now we're only using 4.5 activities, which are taste and selection, deliberation and analysis. And only half of deliberation is currently being used, because our focus is primarily, our focus right now is on senses, body, and profit, rather than being able to see with justice, orderliness, and truth. And we will talk about that a little bit more. So what we were talking about and concluding upon yesterday is that human being right now, humanity as a whole, is living sensitivity-based living, which is essentially when we're using our senses for our behavior and our work. And that way of living is not bringing a satisfaction point. It's not enough for human beings. We also need, instead of just sensitivity-based living, we need living that's based on out of the intellect, which means we're able to have knowledge, wisdom, and science. So just as a quick review, knowledge has to do with knowledge of 3 things: knowledge of the coexistence, knowledge of Jivan, and knowledge of humane conduct. And then wisdom is now, according to that knowledge, I recognize a very definite aim that's aligned with that existential harmony. So very definite aim, and then which is more the why, the purpose, and that's very clear. And we could say that aim for human beings is resolution, prosperity, fearlessness, and coexistence. And then science is now the destination, the how. How can we make that happen? How can we ensure that we can fulfill that aim? So as a whole, he was just setting the background to understanding the Jivan. So today we're going to continue, and we're starting on page 72. And it starts with a human being with trust, just to give you a sense for starting. So I'm going to start reading. But once again, I'm glad to be here with all of you. And let's continue. A human being with trust evidences all 10 activities of Jivan in their living. I evidence all 10 activities of Jivan in my living, and so can you. It is about evidencing the coexistence principle. The atoms and molecules exhibit orderly conduct in the same way. All planets, stars, vegetation, and minerals are also orderly while evidencing the coexistence principle. At the fundamental level, All units are energized in themselves. Existence is a magnificent expression of coexistential harmony, only because units of nature are energized in the absolute energy. All atomic particles, all atoms, and all molecules have the tendency to be orderly within themselves. This is the main inspiration for human being to become orderly. I believe every human being, whether they are a scholar, a scientist, or a layperson, needs the mindset of harmony. It is only with this mindset that we become worthy of calling ourselves human beings. Anything less than human being, as humane conduct, cannot give rise to humankind's magnificence. The magnificence of forests, hills, minerals, animals on this earth is based only on their being in coexistential harmony. Without coexistence, nothing would have been secure. At the fundamental level, each and every reality or unit is conserved, controlled, and energized in omnipotence. The activity of biological cells is limited to the span of the forms of which they are constituents. There is a magnificence of coexistential harmony in a biological cell, and for this reason, such cells combine with one another and result into a definite form of biological order. The Rachana Vidhi, or genetic code, is innate to the Pran Sutra, situated in the biological cells. There is a presence of continuous exploration in these Pran Sutras. This has led to the emergence of numerous kinds of vegetations as statuses within the biological order. Based on this evidence, we can be assured of the presence of exploration activities in Pran Sutras, which is also present in the atomic particles. Imagination and free will are resources within the human being for exploration of meaning and purpose. The powers of thought, desire, and conviction in Jivan always remain engaged in this exploration. It is with these powers alone that the human being evidences the magnificence of all 10 activities of Jivan. The key to this is realization and coexistence, and the realization-rooted way of living. The source for such living is naturally present in every human being. Jivan, or self, has the natural expectation of realization. Every human being naturally expects of becoming wise, and they believe themselves to be wise, experienced, judicious, and reflective. One is surrounded by relationships in existence. Recognizing these relationships, responding to these, and finding mutual fulfillment, thereby itself is the evidence of our having understood justice. Human being is free to choose whether or not they want to become wise. If one chooses to become wise, then existence always has the conditions for that. If one chooses not to become wise, then existence has the conditions for that as well. The results of each choice are different. Wrong understanding will not result in happiness or good. I never wanted to be bound up, or to be a burden, or to fight with anyone. In the same way, you would also not want to be bound up, be a burden, or to fight with others. No one wants to lead a life of dependence. In this way, every human being has this desire to become wise in them. They want to lead life of coherence, with justice, and with resolution. So we're going to stop there for a moment. What he's trying to say, I'm going to just pull some of that all in together. So he's talking about that there is a coexistence, and nature is saturated in space, and all of nature together is functioning with a very definite, orderly conduct. And you can see that there's a definite method of structuring that's in the DNA, and that's in the nucleus. And atoms are coming together, and cells are coming together, and they're making structures of different types. For example, this body is one type of structure. And from that whole process, there's a variety of soil and stones and birds and animal, all the diversity, beautiful diversity you can see on this planet is emerging from that process. And that process is a process of refinement. It's a process of becoming more stable, of betterment, and it's refinement in the genetic code. So not only is that happening, that definite process is happening in the rest of nature, but also in Jivan itself, there's also this tendency, this inclination to move towards refinement, to move towards betterment, more stable state. So that's why you can see within all of us and human beings in general, there's that tendency to refine and try to improve our lives and become better. So when human beings are engaging in that refinement and betterment, we call that research. So human beings are striving, there's a necessity to strive for research. And we have two tools for research, okay? One of them is imagination, and the other one is free will, or freedom of action, you can call. So imagination has to do with our 4.5 activities, where we have this tendency to do research. Research for what? To understand the reality exactly as it is. And that is the purpose of imagination. Right now in schools, sometimes people have this notion imagination is just for understanding all sorts of things that are not necessarily related to reality. I could mix lots of things, and I can take a dragon and I can take a human, and I can mix them with all sorts of different things. And then that becomes, you have this, you're very imaginative. What A. Nagaraji is saying, imagination is there is so that we can comprehend the reality as it is. And for that, we have the 4.5 activities all together, which are the man, vritti, and chit. Okay, and we utilize half of chit, which is the perspective of right now senses, body, and profit. But those 4.5 activities, we're calling that the domain of imagination, and we have those 4.5 activities as a tool for us to understand the reality as it is. Then freedom of action, or what we call free will, is now I can make choices according to that imagination, and where I could evidence whatever I have in my imagination. So if whatever I have in my imagination is rooted in reality, then that can naturally get expressed in my living. So imagination, if my imagination is not rooted in the reality as it is, that also gets expressed. So imagination is there to help us move towards exploring purpose. And when A. Nagarajan, we were saying purpose, we're talking about undivided society and universal orderliness, okay? And it helps us to move towards a life that's based on justice and resolution. And that's a choice that we all have, okay? So we have these two beautiful tools with us every single day, and we need to utilize them well. And our starting point is to utilize those 4.5 activities that we have to align them properly. And aligning properly means with what? With the reality. Understanding the reality as it is and setting our 4.5 activities properly so our imagination can take on the shape of reality as it is. So that kind of gives us a sense of what he was talking about here. So we ended off with they want to lead the life of coherence with justice and resolution. So let's continue further. We are linked with relationships all around us, and our not recognizing these relationships is the whole problem. The moment we recognize relationships, values start flowing from Jivan on their own. Evaluation of relationships thereupon results in mutual fulfillment, and in this way, justice gets evidenced. The way of recognizing a relationship is to understand its purpose. For example, the relationship of mother is recognized based on understanding its purpose of nurturing. The source of nurturing is called mother. In the same way, the source of protection is called father, the source of evidence is called teacher, and the source of inquiry is called student. Within the prevalent tradition, it is being said that we should be efficient like machines. Is human being a machine? Can anyone take up responsibility of answering this question? I declare that human being is not a machine. Human being is the maker of all of the machines that ever got made. A machine could never surpass a human being. A machine would always remain less than human being, and therefore a machine or any instrument cannot grasp the human nature. All the machines are made out of things from the material order only. It is worth noticing that they, scientists, haven't been able to make a single machine with things of biological order. The human being is way further along. They haven't been able to make a single machine out of plant cells, but their boast is that human being is also a machine. To what extent is this thinking good for the human race? Can this thinking ever achieve all-round resolution in human being? It is such a deep-rooted belief of materialism that human being is a machine and a consumer of its sensory fulfillment. The reality, however, is different. Anyone who has lived with a child can tell you that human being is not a machine. I recognize human being along with their consciousness. Consciousness is a combined form of intelligence and sensitivity. If I am not sensitive, then I am not different from any machine. Human being has not yet found fulfillment in machine-like living. I don't see a way of human beings achieving fulfillment if they continue working like machines. I invite any expert who can show me the way to human fulfillment through machine-like living. I have listened to the genetic experts, but they were not able to convince me. The quantum theory and relativity theory have been unsuccessful in giving a definition of the human being. If it is possible to define and describe human being with these three theories, then we should accept them and live thereby. Otherwise, we should recognize human beings as they are in reality. And this proposal, Madhyas Darshan, does just that. So let's stop there for just a moment. So what A. Nagaraj is alluding to here is he's been talking about our current way of living, which is more the mechanistic, machine-based living. And let's look at for a moment what is machine-based living. It's essentially a way of living that we can see very dominating in the society today that I would say is very much based on training without understanding or be very belief-oriented. We don't have an understanding of what we're doing, why we're doing, what is the overall purpose. So we don't see that purpose of undivided society, universal orderliness. We're not able to recognize what is my aim, what is our common goals. We haven't even recognized that. So we're just kind of trained in a mechanistic machine-like way to do like this and do like that, very much governed by the clock, repetition. Our whole lifestyle has been built upon that. So it's essentially a way of living without any sense of purpose, and you're just doing, okay? So no directionality, and with that, there's no fulfillment in it. There's no meaning in it also. A machine is made out of material things, and what we're understanding from A. Nagaraji in this chapter is human being is not this body. We need to identify ourselves as a jivan, which is a conscious entity. And as a conscious entity, there's a necessity to understand the meaning and the purpose. And we need to have not only, we were saying, a sensory-based approach, way of living, but with intellect. We need to have knowledge, wisdom, and science, which is connecting now with the purpose and a definite aim, aligning with that, with existence as it is. And then understanding how to actualize that, how to make that happen in our living. So life devoid of that knowledge, wisdom, and science, devoid of understanding and just doing, that itself is a mechanistic based living. And that is a trend that very much, this is becoming more of a trend in society where people are moving even more towards machine based living. Now there's a talk of cloning, designing your own baby. And the idea is that we don't have any trust in the coexistential design and nature's design as it is. And we haven't understood the existence as it is. That knowledge piece is missing, which is understanding of coexistence. Understanding of jivan, or knowledge of jivan, and knowledge of the humane conduct. And so without that, we're not assured in the existential design. So, and what we need to see is instead is the moving towards more intellect-based living, where again, the knowledge-based, knowledge, wisdom, and science becomes more at the forefront. Then we can establish that we ourselves are more than machines. And right now, how we're living, it's hard for humanity to recognize that I am more of a machine. And I would say even our prevalent current education system, I've worked in the education system for many years here, in the schooling system, and you see nowadays this excitement over machines and using machines and tools and robots and are very much a prevalent part of the schooling system today. And even when we're bringing them to students as well, we're not really identifying with what purpose are we utilizing them, and what is the role of human life. And even to understand a machine properly, we need to understand who am I and understanding my identity. So, and then what got me in this also is because I myself am a parent, and I have two children, Anandi Bitaji and Devan Bitaji. So we have two children, and they're age 8 and 10. And our children, he's saying here, A. Nagaraji is saying, is that if you live with a child, you can see that there's no machine. They're not living like machines at all. And that's very, I think, evident to all parents. But from my experience, you can see that for a child, they're constantly in a quest to understand. There's a thirst for justice, a thirst to know everything around them. So if I take a walk, we live in a forest area here, I take a walk in the forest, you see with a young child, every moment is a moment to inquire and to investigate and to explore. So they're, you see a rock, you're not just walking by it. You're lifting up the rock, seeing what's under it. What is this? Oh, it's a new type of bug. What is the role of bugs? Why is the sky like this? Why are the trees like this? So there's a constant inquiring process and stopping to investigate. So that's moving them towards, it's a drive, a quest for understanding, so that you can see there's no machine-like living in that. And I think it's very beautiful, and we can, when we see our children, we can see the necessity for that as well. So I think, just finding the spot where we need to go back to. And so he's saying that there's no fulfillment in this machine-based living. And in order to move to more intelligence, where we can see human being as a form not only of sensitivity, yes, we have senses and we will utilize them, but we also need to see the intelligence aspect, the knowledge, wisdom, and science. And for that, we need to have a proper definition of human being. And human being, thus far, we haven't been able to properly define human being. And so what I wanted to just bring about here before we move forward is how A. Nagaraj is defining human being. He's saying one who materializes one imagination, and one who expects or evidences a healthy state of mind. So you can see we have something in our imagination. I imagine I want to build a house. So I imagine it first, and then I can materialize that. Okay, I have my imagination, and then I materialize it. I have a free will, I make a choice, I can utilize my body to actualize it. So humanity as a whole, we have materialized a lot of our physical necessities. Our food, clothing, shelter has been materialized. We imagine that when we were able to materialize that. But what we're still expecting, humanity as a whole, is a healthy state of mind, where we can say we have fulfilled that our innateness, which is to be happy, not to just live or survive, but to live with happiness. And for that requires a very definite understanding. And so either we're expecting in that healthy state of mind, or we get to a point where we're able to realize the coexistence as it is, and then we're able to evidence it in our living. So that's how A. Nagaraj is defining human being. And so we have this amazing proposal to support us to properly define what it means to be human, and move from a machine-based living to more intelligence-based living. So let's move forward. We're now on page 75. Prior to Madhyastarshan, idealism had positioned God as the savior. I have seen God, and I say there's no such thing as a savior God. In what form did I see God? I saw God to be in the form of omnipresent space. I saw God as the absolute energy in which all units of nature are energized. I have seen every unit to be in its coexistence. What more is there to be seen regarding God? If anything still remains, then you are most welcome to see it and show it to the world. You are free to explore it yourself. That which I saw and understood have been presented before you. Human fulfillment could not result through the lens of sensitivity or through a mechanistic view. The sensitivity view focuses on the sensory contact. Sensory capabilities and desires vary from one person to person. This leads to dividing human beings according to their tastes and preferences, which is individualism. Secondly, the mechanistic view gives rise to consumerism, which is necessary necessarily individualistic as already evident. The third view is idealism, which we inherited from our ancestors. Idealism propagates devotion and detachment. There's no end to individualism here either. All great human endeavors, even with the most noble intentions, resulted in utter failure because of individualism. Individualism contradicts coexistentialism. It is the root cause of fragmentation in humankind. The only place where human being can live is in coexistence with others, in coexistence with others. The way to live in coexistential orderliness for the human being is to recognize the coexistence within the human being. If this is recognized, then orderly living becomes possible for the human being, and one becomes capable of participating in the universal orderliness, which includes living in coexistence with the animal world and the plant world. If we take something from the plant world, then we should have something to give back as well. We are living in our own fictitious world if we want to keep taking without giving anything back. This fictitious way of living results in nothing but frustration and suffering, which is already happening. In order to live in the coexistential orderliness, we human beings need to also determine our coexistence with the mineral world, the plant world, and the animal world. If we are incapable of determining our coexistence with these, then we are not learned, we are not scientists, and we are not wise. Our learning, science, and understanding are incomplete until we have achieved harmonious coexistence with our environment. How will we live without the plants, the earth, the hills, the minerals, and the animal world? These are magnificent treasures, and our living is integrated with these. We need to live with these. These too need to be there. Human beings need to decide about this. Human being has lived in frustration and suffering due to their delusion. Now the need is there to turn the tide. Human beings need to awaken. We need to recognize coexistence with everything. As we go about it, we discover that everything is present in the omnipotent space. This is the first testimony of coexistence. Biological order came about from this material order and the successive progression of emergence, affected its eternal presence, and established the magnificence of its continuity. Animal world is also as it evidenced as orderliness with its essence of being. Human being needs to understand the essence, toi, and the identity, soi, of their being. The identity should be there, essence should be there also, and that is the moot point, or the main point. Jivan Vidya results in understanding of both identity and essence of human being. I recognize Jivan as the identity of human being. You can also recognize it. Until one identifies with body, one lives in delusion. The very moment I recognize Jivan as an identity, I start living orderly. You will also be able to live orderly in the same way. The orderly living is not going to happen before that. Consciousness development is such a natural process where Jivan is the entity that is to be understood, and the entity that understands is also Jivan. The liberation, according to idealism, is when the seer, the seen, and their interrelation become one. According to them, God itself is the seer, or the subject, the seen, the object, and the interrelation between the seer and the seen. A great deal of literature has been written based on these premises. Still, one doesn't have any clear answers to these questions, such as, what is God? Where is God? Why is God there? In spite of this, people listen to these discourses because it makes them feel good. It is worth mentioning the gap between feeling good and being good has remained as it is. Subsequently, they, the materialists, tried to model human being like a machine. They didn't succeed in that endeavor, but kept on arguing on those lines. Just as the idealists kept on arguing about God, even though they could not explain it, in this way we've become stuck, being unable to think anything apart from these two premises. The way out now is to think based on the premise that Jivan is eternal, immortal. Body is a recurring event for Jivan. The body gets formed in the womb. The natural processes in existence result in Adam's development and its transitioning into Jivan's status. Body keeps forming and deforming again and again. And each unit of biological order has a lifespan after which it gets formed. Body too is a unit composed of biological cells. Human body is the most enriched brain that could have been possible in the body. On this basis, I declare that human being can communicate the knowledge of the whole existence to another human being. There is no purpose of further development of the brain. Therefore, human body is the most evolved form of biological order, which is the result of successive exploration of the Pran Sutras. And if something is yet remaining, then it will become complete in the future. Meanwhile, what are we to do in our lifetime? We need to produce evidence of Jivan's awakening. So that was a very actually long section. So what he's been talking about is in the beginning, and that whole section he's been talking about right now, when we're living with a sensitivity view, then what ends up happening, sensitivity-based view, is rooted in senses and our preferences and what we like and dislike. Those things differ amongst human beings. And so that is very much rooted in an individualistic way of seeing and living. And so you can see we've got 7 billion people living on the planet. Each person has their own liking and disliking. And according to that, people are deciding, okay, I'm living my life like this because I like it like this, and without any definite purpose, without any definite aim, common goals to establish together. So that's an individualistic way of living. And the mechanistic view, that itself, when we're living more like a machine, which what we're saying is more belief-oriented and just doing in absence of a larger purpose or understanding, that gives rise to consumerism, because mechanistic view is seeing things in a material sense. And if you see things as a material sense, I'm a body, I'm this body. So then it leads you to more consumerism, is to hoard and take more. Because innately we want to have happiness, but if we don't have any other avenue to do it, then human beings are seeking a way to fulfill. It's not really fulfill, but a seeking a way for fulfillment, ultimately to be happy. But if we, in absence of understanding the way to do that, then we get into consumerism and hoarding. And the third view, which he's saying is idealism, that we've inherited from our ancestors, that itself, which is related to devotion and detachment. So you're devoting to God, but I need to detach from this body. So we're not seeing that the body has a role in my participation in this coexistence. So all three of those views itself are all rooted in individualism. And what A. Nagaraji is proposing is coexistentialism, a viewpoint based on coexistence, where we're able to see that everything in existence, from matter, plant, animal, and human being, all coexist together. So it's a togetherness-based view, and how we can participate harmoniously in the coexistence. So, and I like what he's saying, the only place where a human being can live is in coexistence. Because usually human beings, when we say where I live, oh, I live in this country, or I live in this place, and we've kind of divided up the earth. And so we see, we have this fragmented view. And so we see, oh, I can only live in this place or in that place. But he's saying the only place where we can live is in the coexistence. And that's the only thing that will ensure tradition. So our place actually is not about fragmenting the planet and saying, you know, human beings had that fragmented view, and then we've given names to different places, and that's okay to recognize where we are in this larger picture. But ultimately, in the bigger scheme of things, you can see that our place is in coexistence. You cannot remove ourselves from this coexistence. And so human beings need to understand, we need to move towards, instead of individualism, we need to move towards coexistence, where we can recognize our collective aim, which is undivided society, universal orderliness, our purpose, then definite aims according to that. And then thus we have very definite results where now we can participate in orderliness in the system. So we need to emerge, we need to take this proposal and move towards a coexistence mindset, okay? So he's starting there, and he's saying if we don't have a coexistence mindset, then we're not learned, we're not scientists, we're not wise. So right now, I like, you know, that comment as well, because if you see in science right now, we just say scientist, someone who does experiments or doing something, you know, in the field of nature, when you're exploring something or investigating, someone also who made the atomic bomb, they maybe are called also a scientist. But where's the wisdom in that? So ultimately, science cannot be devoid of wisdom. And also wisdom cannot be devoid of knowledge. So first, we need to have knowledge of the existence as it is, which is coexistence. And if we can comprehend that as it is, then now we can have a very definite direction. And then only then we can say we're scientists. Now we know how to make that happen. And now our science will be rooted with wisdom. So he's talking about the rooting of coexistence in our mindset. And then he's coming here to say that human beings need to understand the essence, or toi, and the identity, soi, of their being. To make that happen, so we need a proper understanding. So he's saying understanding of what? Toi, which is essence. In Hindi, they use the word toi. Well, first, maybe I'll explain it, and then I'll explain essence. In English, we'll use the word definite conduct. It means definite conduct. Every unit is with its definite conduct. And with that definite conduct, we're evidencing the system. So human beings also have, human beings as a whole, if you look at, we also have, there's a definite unique conduct that the human beings can be defined by. And that is living with values, character, and ethics. So values is what bring orderliness within. Values like trust, respect, affection, care, those are universal. And then character, so commitment in relationships, self-wealth rather than exploitation. I'm able to enrich the planet through my work and ensure prosperity while enriching the planet, and kind work and behavior. And then the last one is ethics, which is now I know how to use my body, my mind, and my wealth. So human beings need to be defined by that essence, which is definite conduct. The thing is, in Hindi, when we use the word twa, they say, for example, manatwa, or they say gayatwa or nimatwa. So gaya means cow, so cowness, or manatwa, humanness, or gayat, or nimatwa, so neem is a type of plant. The nest, the neemness, the mangoness, the guyness. Guy means the cowness. So it's how can we identify what it means to be a cow? That what is that definite conduct that defines what it means to be a human? And that's living with values, character, and ethics. And right now, in the name of that, human beings, because we have a more individualistic and sensitivity-based lens, we're not able to see this, what this definite human being with their definite conduct. So we see that we're all different, and we feel that we're all unique from each other. But in fact, humanity as a whole, human race as a whole, is unique from animals, and it's unique from plants, and it's unique from matter order. So we need to establish as a whole human race what is unique. And that what is unique to us is that definite conduct. We can define ourselves by that definite conduct, which is values, character, and ethics. So that's what toi means, or essence. And then soi is ultimately my identity. Who am I? Am I seeing myself as a body? And right now we identify ourselves based on that, which is delusion, and it leads to all sorts of struggles. But ultimately, what A. Nagarji is saying is that our swa is jivan. I need to see myself as jivan, as a conscious entity. And so as soon as we recognize jivan as a conscious entity, I see myself, I am jivan. From then onward, only then we can now participate in orderliness. And if we're expecting by seeing myself as a body, then I can participate in some sort of system, that's not going to happen. So first step is recognizing myself as a conscious entity, as jivan. And in light of that, then now I can understand that definite humane conduct. And as I understand that, then now I can live not only with that identity, that self-identity, now I can live with my essence also, which is participating in orderliness, becoming a system within, and participation in system. So I think those were very important points to get at. I'm finding the last point here. So another final point I just want to mention here, which I think is really important and really worth the time to mention, A. Nagarji was saying, on this basis, I declare that human being can communicate the knowledge of the whole existence to another human being. There is no purpose of further development of the brain. So what he's saying there, this is, first of all, a huge paradigm shift in thinking, because in the past, we were saying that, first of all, human being cannot comprehend the entire existence as a whole. We can't comprehend it. That was overall, we are limited, and the existence, we are not able to comprehend it as a whole. And the second thing is that human being cannot communicate. Even if one were to realize something, it cannot be communicated in words. Whereas Einagra is saying is every human being is meant to comprehend the existence as a whole, and it can be communicated through words to another human being, through words and through my living to another human being. And so in light of that, there's no purpose of further development of the brain, because human beings are always thinking, oh yeah, maybe brain is going to develop and evolve further. But if you look in light of purpose, human beings are the one who can comprehend the existence as a whole and communicate it. So the purpose of the brain has been evolved, and it's been fulfilled. And there's no lack of purpose in that. There's no more to go with it. So there's no need for any further evolution in that. And so that's just what I wanted to mention. And I want to mention when A. Nagaraju is mentioning awakening, he's talking about two things. One of them is activity completeness, which is all 10 activities of Jivan are being awakened. And the other one is ensuring its evidence. And its continuity. Okay, so I think let's move forward. I see here. So we need to produce, we're on, I guess, page 78 now. We need to produce evidences of Jivan's awakening, not, I see here, I left in the middle of the sentence, not to be hidden away. It can neither be done by ways of idealism nor by ways of science. Idealism had prescribed many practices for subjugating the senses. Many ascetics came on this earth, but their efforts did not result in accomplishing that definite understanding for which humankind had been thirsting, which could be brought into practice, which could take the form of a living tradition. Now it is for those ascetics to say what they have lost or found by doing those practices. Common people followed them like mad in the hope of seeing some miracles or mystical powers. Let me make it clear that there are no miracles or mystical powers in existence. Existence is a definite order that has definite outcomes of definite actions. There are definite milestones and accomplishments in existence, and each accomplishment has its continuity. I have witnessed and understood it. We, all human beings, are in anticipation of reaching such a definite destination in our lives. This definite destination can only be reached by a definite path. We cannot reach our definite destination without studying the human being as the human being is in reality. We cannot reach the definite destination of human being by denouncing the study of human being, by calling a cockroach as the most developed species. We cannot reach the definite destination of human being by destroying Earth with chemical fertilizers and insecticides. We cannot reach the definite destination of human being by using human intellect as money, using it for exploitation by calling it intellectual property right. The top world institutions and judicial courts of every nation also have been waiting to accept and to legalize the intellectual property right. Jivan's powers are inexhaustible. How can you treat those as a commodity? Can anyone answer this? Have they been put forth this proposal? Have they put forth this proposal after having understood consciousness? How far would it prove to be beneficial for humankind? I know that Jivan's powers do not diminish. How so much one may use them. You can see it for yourself. The powers of Jivan do not exhaust by their use, and the more they are used, the sharper they become. The powers of Jivan cannot be quantified. Any effort of quantifying conscious powers will only result in frustration. Intellectual property right mechanism illustrates how we mortgage our own intellectual capabilities, become slaves, and make it a basis of exploitation. In my view, it is against humanity and coexistence to make human intellect as basis of exploitation, to make it a basis of conflict, to make it exclusive, and to put it on sale. Their argument is, I have ownership on my ideas, and if you use my idea, then you will need to pay a commission, and that's how there will be justice in society. Can this ever be true? This is something to be thinking about. These claims are blatant lies, according to me. Human intellect cannot be measured or quantified. Every human being has inexhaustible intellectual capacity, which cannot be confined in any boundaries, in any books. I see myself to be bigger than whatever literature I have written, bigger than all the machines. Human being is bigger than all machines and all books. All books have been all books have been written by human being, and every human being is bigger than all books. I don't think we will come to the right sense until we've reached this conclusion. After all of these discussions, we can perhaps reach a conclusion and accept that which is right. The final conclusion is reached that we humans must achieve the right understanding. There's no difficulty in our achieving it. The difficulties are only until we use wrong understanding. This earth is one integral whole, and it is we humans using wrong understanding that see it fragmented as many nations. Using wrong understanding that see it fragmented, as many nations. Not just that, we have deployed armies around each such fragment and keep fighting every now and then. The earth cannot be fragmented into pieces, and no one will survive it if it is broken up into fragments. Are we right if we are assuming our earth to be fragmented? This is something to think about. This is something to think about. It illustrates the extent to which we have become steeped in lies. Another illustration of prevalent falsehood is in our dividing human being like animals based on our skin color and race. What kind of intelligence is this? The value of human being is assessed based on their understanding and not color of their skin or their race. We've seen such events in the history. For example, revolt against the age of slavery, and then revolt against the age of feudalism. Feudalism gave way to democracy, but we have not succeeded yet in bringing about orderliness-based socialism or humanism, though we think that we may have become successful. The lie is in our assuming that we have understood and achieved everything. What have we achieved really? Just some comforts. The wars, the conflicts, and exploitation are still there. Where are the sources of these lies? The lie is in the idea of nation that is based on assumption that the earth is fragmented. The lie is in the idea of constitution that believes in and describes the rule by power. They say nation and constitution is above everything. What is the essence of this constitution? It is ruled by a power center. What is ruled by power center? It is to stop one mistake by making another mistake, stop one crime by committing another crime, and stop one war by waging another war. Some constitution provision ensuring basic facilities for all. Here too, the underlying assumption is that one who has money would be able to struggle and survive. All of them declare life is a struggle, and our survival depends only on struggle. Is there any truth in such slogans? All lies have their roots in such slogans. Family, education, business, etc. are all buried underneath this bundle of lies. Some try to escape, but most stay buried underneath these lies. We therefore desire to bring a change in the education. So we'll just stop there for just a moment and go back and touch upon some key points that A. Nagaraju was mentioning here. So a little bit earlier on, he was mentioning that the powers of Jivan do not exhaust by their use. In fact, they become sharper as we utilize them. He's talking about the Jivan powers are inexhaustible. And so what's happening today is that we are trying to commodify the intellectual property of Jivan. And what A. Nagaraju is saying is that you cannot commodify something because Jivan itself it cannot be it's something, there's quality and quantity, and Jivan has no it cannot be quantified, it cannot be measured. It's something that is based on quality. So it's not only material things can be commodified. So for example, if I'm investing my physical labor and I'm growing some food in the garden, or I'm making some clay pots, I'm losing something in my body. My body's losing some of its power, its energy. And so because there's some loss in it, so I can exchange with someone else. And everything there, you can see everything can be measured, and it has a quantity, so it can be quantified as well. So because of that, you can exchange it. So, but for Jivan power, the more you utilize it, the sharper it becomes. It's not something that you lose. So because Jivan itself is immortal, so all of its faculties, all of its activities are inexhaustible. So thus we cannot make any business or commodify anything that has to do with knowledge. And knowledge is the domain that has to do with Jivan. And that's the crux point of what he's trying to say. And through A. Nagaraji, we have all understood that this knowledge needs to be passed down as a gift to humanity, and we do not fulfill our physical needs through this knowledge. This is passed on freely, and it's not. There's no price tag on it. It doesn't become exclusive. It needs to be available to all human beings, and it needs to be passed down from one generation to the next, and be made a part of the humane tradition. So I think that's something all of us have learned from A. Nagaraji. And I remember when I first came to India, and I had seen this because growing up in the West, things very quickly become a business, and quickly knowledge, whatever you think you know or information you have, quickly people are trying to take that and make a business out of the so-called knowledge. And it's because we haven't been able to recognize what are the things that are qualitative and what are the things that are quantitative. And because we see ourselves as a body, we haven't seen that conscious entity. So thus, it's reflecting ultimately how we choose and how we live our life. And so this has been a source of inspiration for many of us. And that's why we pass on this understanding fully freely as a gift to anyone and everyone. So that's something I think that's very important. And the other aspect that he's talking about here, the lies in the idea of the nation that is being a nation that is based on the assumption that the earth is fragmented. So what A. Nagaraji is saying is that the earth is itself, if he gives the definition of nation, nation itself is the whole earth. The earth is not fragmented. Right now, our notion of nation is country, which is more this fragmented notion of earth, which is how human imagination has created all the boundaries. But A. Nagaraji, his definition of nation is actually 4 orders, which is matter order, plant order, animal order, and knowledge order, which is human beings. And human beings is a combined expression of body and Jivan. So he's saying the combination, the 4 orders, and its continuity. And what will allow continuity of those 4 orders to sustain on this planet? If we have an awakened human tradition, where human beings can recognize themselves as a conscious entity, and we could activate all 10 activities of Jivan and evidence that in our living, and ensure tradition where there's an education and system that allows a tradition of that. Okay, so it's a very different definition. It's very beautiful. And then he's also talking about constitution here. He's saying that the current constitution creates one problem, trying to fix one problem by creating another problem, and it's very power-centered rule. And A. Nagaraji himself has provided a constitution, and when he's defining constitution, it's a way, it's a document which could provide support for human beings so we could evidence completeness. And completeness means, again, completeness in my 10 activities, and completeness in terms of ensuring definite conduct, which is living with values, character, and ethics. So it's to support human being to live with justice, resolution, coexistence, a description of how we can right use our body, our mind, our wealth, how we can ensure orderliness from family all the way to global family, how we can bring about programs to ensure systems, so justice, production, exchange, health, and education. So it's essentially a document that could move humanity to achieving our the purpose and our collective, our common goals. So we can be system within and participate in system. So it's also a huge paradigm shift in how we see constitution, how we see nation. Okay, so let's move forward. So now we're on, I'm losing sight because this document is a little bit different, I guess page 81. We've now become ready to evidence all 10 activities of Jivan in our living. Let me just see if it's worthwhile actually to go further with the amount of time that we have. Let me see here. Okay, I think I'll just conclude, I'll do one more session and one more little section before we conclude. I think we have enough time to to do that. Now, we've now become ready to evidence all 10 activities of Jivan in our living. Every human being has acceptance of their being conscious. Without any training, every human being asserts their being conscious, but they are ignorant about consciousness, its purpose, and the entity which studies it. I have understood the 10 activities of Jivan, seen these in my living, and they're becoming evident in me. Let's first become familiar with their names. Number 1, Atma. Atma is a part of Jivan which realizes in coexistence. I have seen it as nucleus activity in the constitutionally complete atom. All remaining activities of Jivan happen in its first, second, third, and fourth orbits. The nucleus of Jivan, atom or Atma, is in the form of only 2 activities, realization and authenticity, whose evidence is buddhi. I have seen understanding, bodh, of realization, evidence, and conviction, sankalp, activities happen in the first orbit of Jivan. The conviction activity emerges for evidencing the realization evidence whose name is truth force, ritambara, chit. Contemplation, chintan, and visualization, chitran, are the 2 activities that happen in the second orbit of Jivan. Vritti, deliberation, tulan, and analysis, vishleshan, activities happen in the third orbit of Jivan. Man, taste, asvadan, and selection, chayan, activities happen in the fourth orbit of Jivan. Thus far, human being could evidence only 4.5 activities of Jivan in their living. There are 2 categories of perspectives in which deliberation, tulan, takes place in vritti, like health, profit, and justice, liking-based, health-based, and profit-based, and justice, dharam, truth. Sensitivity-based living could happen with like, health, and profit perspective. Sensitivity is rooted in senses and body, while in reality, it is Jivan that makes the senses alive. Assuming the body to be Jivan itself is the root delusion. If one assumes to be body to be Jivan, then one's living becomes according to the body. It becomes the basis of all of one's believing, in which there is no knowing. What should be there in its place? We should believe Jivan to be as Jivan is in reality, and body to be as body is in the reality. The correct evaluation of body and Jivan happens based on their purpose. If that happens, human being lives with human consciousness and natural orderliness. If this evaluation doesn't happen, then disorder in human living is inevitable. Orderliness in human living requires that the evaluation of Jivan is done on a human purpose, and evaluation of body. Jivan is done based on human purpose, and evaluation of body is done based on its usefulness. The usefulness of body is in Jivan's evidencing its awakening in the human tradition. Human being has not designed the human body. Once the human body gets formed in the womb and the child is born, then consciousness is already present in the child. Thereupon, we start believing that the child body alone is the child itself. After a few days, the child also starts believing that the same. This is the way the entire human tradition is trapped in delusion. The parents and guardians will need to understand the distinction of Jivan and body if humankind is to come out of this trap. So we will just stop here, and I'll just kind of conclude on a couple of points here of what A. Nagaraji is trying to say here, is that right now there's 2 ways of living, okay? There's a body-based living, and then there's a system-based living. Right now we've identified ourselves as a body, and that leads to more sensitivity-based living, and that has its whole sense of kind of a package of consequences or results. And then there's system-based rooted living, which has its own package and results, okay? So when it's body-based living, we're rooted in senses. And when we're rooted in senses, then when we're doing deliberation, we're making sense of options and kind of thoughtfully going through what are the options. We are deliberating based on senses. We're deliberating based on, senses, body, and profit, which is more like liking based. Either I like something, I dislike it, or what's conducive or not so conducive, or what's profitable or less profitable, okay? And when we're living based on more system-based living, which is when I recognize myself to be a Jivan, I can see that I'm a conscious being, and I can recognize all the 10 activities of Jivan. And now I'm living based on knowledge, wisdom, and science. So now deliberation is happening in a very different way. Now deliberation is happening on a different perspective, which is based on justice, resolution, and truth, or we can say truth is coexistence. And that is only can happen if we recognize coexistence, okay? So justice is between human to human when I recognize my relationship with human beings in terms of system, and then I recognize the values emerge. Then there's proper evaluation and mutual fulfillment, okay? So that what brings a sense of harmony within our relationships. Then resolution is when we can see everything with its innateness and we can participate in balance, not only with human beings, but with the rest of the environment. And truth, you're able to see the whole existential harmony. Everything is rooted in coexistence. And so deliberation is happening in a very different way right now. Instead of individualistic way, it's now becoming coexistential way, okay? And so Jivan is enlivening the body, but there's a delusion that I am this body, okay? And so we're living based on this belief, but we're also we're not able to know properly. So we need to understand that Jivan is not just this body, and I need to see myself with a larger purpose. And we need to see Jivan with its purpose and body with its purpose. Body in this existence has a very definite purpose, and so does Jivan. And so Jivan has a purpose of undivided society and universal orderliness. And the body is there so I can awaken 10 activities and evidence those 10 activities. So I can utilize the body as a tool for that. So we need to, otherwise we're not evaluating properly. And evaluation is very, very important in human life. So we need to see everything with its purpose distinctly. Jivan purpose, body purpose. And then proper evaluation leads to proper fulfillment also. So I think we will stop here and we will continue with this tomorrow. Thank you for being here with me today. I want to once again express my gratitude to A. Nagaraji for this amazing book, Ik Parichay, or an introduction to Jivan Vidya. And I want to express my gratitude to him, and again, all of his family members for allowing this to be possible, for providing this proposal to all of us. And I want to express my gratitude as well to Rakesh brother and to Priyanka's sister for this amazing translation and for creating this opportunity for us to share. So thanks for being with me, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. We'll continue further. We will continue at the same time tomorrow morning. Okay. Thank you, everyone, and good evening or have a great day, depending on where you are. Bye and namaste.